Hello everyone, today we are sketching this rather fun lighthouse. It's a Bolton lighthouse, got a fun sunrise behind it. The reference is Unsplash. Let me know in the comments, what do you think? Is this too much negative space? Because that's what we're concentrating on today, is how we can leave lots of white negative space to really make something pop, and how to make decisions about negative space as we're sketching, rather than necessarily fully planning it out. So we've got this lovely sort of shape of rocks. What we're going to use is a lot of negative space to just make our lighthouse pop out. But let's start with our lighthouse. Remember, it's hard to draw a big straight line, it's hard to draw a long straight line, so don't worry about it. Make it a bit wobbly, and we can sort of just reinforce it by going up and down a few times and eventually finding the right line, just like that. We can do the same on the other side. And this is how we just gradually build up this shape. And there's lots of sort of stuff going on at the back of the lighthouse, isn't there? All this sort of mesh and different not tones, but different densities of dark where different bits of metalwork overlap. Don't worry about that yet, just get in the shapes. And when we've got the shapes, we can start working on a bit more of the detail. Now we can see a lot of the bottom of this lighthouse, so we can give it a relatively smooth edge, at least for this top of this black area, and even at the bottom actually. The reason is it's sort of sitting on a little pedestal, so we can get that kind of pedestal in, a bit more rugged, and then we can start building in the rocks coming around. We've got the kind of back layer, which is important to get in. Now don't draw these exact rocks. What you want to do is draw the shapes. They're a series of just geometric squares really, so just bring the idea of those shapes in. And we can always sort of redo, so we do these wobbly lines, we can come back and add in a little bit more irregularity as well. And bring that all the way down, and then just bring in the front of that coastline. I can see that my pen's running out of ink there, so I'm just going to swap to a different pen. The only difference here is that this is an extra fine nib and this is a fine nib. The difference is quite small, but I think noticeable, but that doesn't matter. Okay, and we just get in the kind of this shape, this general shape of what's going on. There's nice sort of rocks which are outlining the lighthouse. When you're creating with negative space, it's nice to create that outline with it as well. And I said we've got this back line, but then we've also got a kind of another outline within this space, haven't we? And that's one which sort of cuts in here, comes a little bit in front of our pedestal, and then frames what I assume is a road leading up to the lighthouse. Now when we're thinking about the kind of perspective of what's going on here, as we get closer we want our rock shapes to be getting bigger and bigger. So that's what I'm trying to achieve with some of these sort of irregular lines. As we get closer, I want the rocks to be bigger on the page. Not bigger in real life, but just bigger in how their image is coming to us. Now we've got all of this gap here. We can have a think, do we want to fill it, do we not? Well, why don't we leave it for now and then see what happens at the end. An important line to get in is this horizon line. I'm going to drop the horizon line so that it intersects the rocks a bit. And then I don't think it will come, it will just peak above here in it. So there we go. You can just map that horizon line going all the way across. We've got a lovely sort of loose sort of rolling hills, not really mountains, but lovely hills, and they can just peak above the rocks. So we can change our image a little bit to fit what we want. And I think a nice touch here, if we're going to have negative space, we'll probably fill the sky, fill the sea, but have all these kind of rocks and things as negative space. But to lift them apart, we can also add some just really simple hatching, just to give that different tone. And I'm just going to go along and just discontinuous hatching to start with, because we can always come back and fill in these gaps I'm leaving, but I suspect that we won't want to. And what we're doing is we're just showing that there's two different planes here. So we're showing very much that these distance things are in the distance and this foreground is very much in the foreground. They're not connected, even though we're going to leave them both as this negative space. Now, the bit we want to do as well is get a little bit more detail in this lighthouse. So the first thing we do is just look for where are those biggest changes of tone. So we can see that actually the biggest is a very high value dark in the background here. And so if I just get a little bit of horizontal hatching this time, and I'm trying to do a bit of a curve in keeping with the perspective, and then some much more gentle hatching to cover the whole area, including these kind of vertical lines which are suggesting those uprights. Then we've got in the background a couple of more uprights, and then we can actually see the ellipse of the bottom, the underside of this. I'm going to call it a lid. And we can block that in very dark. And that's kind of starting to build up our detail, isn't it? Now the lighthouse is naturally white, but it's got a lot of dark on it as well, a lot of shadow. So you're going to have a think when we come to our negative space. Are we going to leave the lighthouse as negative space? Or are we going to use that shadow? It's not a decision we have to make now. It's just something to start thinking about. Certainly these dark windows and dark doorways we can just use some dense hatching to make nice and high in value, get that dark already. It gives us a bit more freedom with our colours whilst maintaining a little bit more accuracy in terms of sort of realism. We can just add in a few sort of these, there's lots of little smudges and things, aren't there? So a few little textural lines, little dots here and there. I think that is our little sketch done. So now to start thinking about the colours. I'm going to start off with my normal mop brush, size 2 mop brush. And we're going to work, I think, from the top down and get this nice gradient of blue into yellow. So I've got a mix here which is already a bit of paint grey from something I was painting earlier. Just add a little bit of cobalt in there, and that will give us that kind of slightly grubby blue that's in the top of our horizon, top of our sky. We want it to come down and behind. You can see some of that ink is still not dry because of the sort of density I've put. So that's alright, worth noting, but I wasn't expecting that, to be honest. I thought it would be dry, but it doesn't really change anything. They've still got lovely loose colours. Going to add a little bit more cobalt in a few places just to give that sky a bit of nice variation. And you can see there's plenty of water in there. Now I've got this is a Hansi yellow mixed with a quinacridone. Again, something I've been using to paint earlier. And I like using the paints rather than just cleaning out my tin. It's nice to know that you can sort of continue using those paints up. You don't have to waste the paints. That's why little sketches like this and using all these old colours is quite nice, at least something that I enjoy doing. We can take a little bit of water as well and just, you see how in the sky there's almost a band of light, of white going through the back, and just taking a clean brush, I'm drying it off on a towel I've got to the side. We can just create that nice boundary, and I think we can get the intensity of orange to be much higher coming in here. Now you can see the sea, normally it reflects the sky, and I think it subtly does. The back's quite light and there might be a hint of orange in there, but what we're going to do, or what I'm going to do, is take that and run with it. So we are going to reflect the sky. So we've got the little bit of sea in the background there. And what we can do, we can take quite a bold orange, just run it along the lip of those mountains. And then we just do the reverse of what we've already done. So we then come in with some yellow. And then we bring forward these sort of grubby blues. And just getting a focus of more dark when we're in the foreground under these kind of crevasses of rock. and a tiny bit more cobalt, and then it's feeling a little bit uncontrolled, so I'm going to change to my little size 6 round brush, and that's going to let me just move around and move these colours to be more accurate around that negative space. When you're leaving negative space, it can be quite nice to have a fairly crisp outline or crisp edge, so that it looks really purposefully done, rather than risking it looking a bit slapdash. Equally, if you want to make it more loose, then really going for the looseness is a nice way to show that you purposefully meant it to be loose. So either way works, but I think if you're doing either, going loose or going neat, try and go all for it, or don't, and experiment and see what happens. So we're just building in a little bit more tone into the sky, a little bit more variation with some splashes and things. I'm then just trying to get a little bit more intensity of colour around the lighthouse, just to make it pop a little bit more. And I think that's quite interesting, but at the moment I think it's a little bare. So we can now answer our question, what are we going to do with the lighthouse? And I think we're not going to leave it blank, because leaving it blank would leave a bit too much white space going on, at least for me. So what I'm going to do is take some Payne's Grey, a little bit of Moon Glow. So you're going to have an interesting wash. I'm going to use that to bring out the shadows which are in this lighthouse. So I want the darkest shadow to be under the top here. So you probably need even a little bit more intensity of pigment under the top and down this side. Then take a clean brush and just wash that and let it move around the lighthouse. We've got some interesting spikes of colour in there as well. So in this window, there's some orange. I'm going to just drop it in the window. I'm going to drop it in this window as well, and in this window. And then they're going to bloom outwards because everything's still nice and wet. Since we're shadowing the lighthouse, it'd be good to give it a shadow underneath as well. So just bring that there, and then what we can do is carefully map out a shadow into these rocks. If we sort of leave the rock faces, or some of the rock faces, clear, that would give the impression of how the shadow is interacting with the landscape. Now, I've not done a perfect job with that, but we can come back with our pen in a moment and sort of fix that. We can give it a little glow as well, so if we just drop some yellow and some orange in, and then let it waft to the sides, and then we can reflect that glow down here as well. And a little bit more intensity of pigment, and we can also bring out the shadows. Since we're doing shadows here, bring out some of the shadows in these rock faces, and now we've got these rocks really interacting with the landscape, not just sort of being total negative space. We're still leaving a lot of negative space, but we're just getting a bit more interaction going as well. And then just want to bring out some more intense dark here and in the top, and a few little touches in the other parts of the lighthouse as well. And there we go. I would say that is my little sketch done as far as the colours go. So what we can do, yeah, it's touch dry now in places, so we can start with our pen, just doing a little bit of neatening up. And what I'm going to do is start in the places where I sort of sketched and painted first, and that means I'll be able to be more confident that the paint's already dry. Of course, you could also wait probably 10 minutes or so, let it dry out, or even use a hairdryer, although hairdryers are convenient, but they tend to flatten a lot of these colours, which can be a shame if you spent a while introducing interesting colours. What we can do with our pen is bring these outlines that we've made and just make sure that they incorporate perhaps any mistakes, any splodges of colour. So if we've left a bit of a bit of a gap somewhere, we can just go around it. So for example, here we've got a little bit of rock face covered. Here there's an extra splodge in the rock, so we can go around it. And now we're sort of just encapsulating the colours, however neatly or not neatly we did them, and making them more part of our pen work as well. And some of these lines just bolden up, just the ones which are key to understanding the scene and the shapes going on. And then I think the last bit of boldening to do is probably around the lighthouse. We really want the lighthouse to stand forward, and to achieve that we can make it one of the boldest objects, the most outlined object. Bold lines, of course, bringing things forward very nicely in sketching and in painting and in all art, to be honest. And there we go. So I'm going to pop a little signature, and that's my little quite simple fun sketch doodle of a lighthouse. I hope you enjoyed that. Please do let me know. Leave a comment, like, subscribe if you enjoy my channel, and thank you very much for joining in.